we need to really start tuning in and finding our gifts that have not changed. No matter where our body is, we still have those same gifts to offer.
Welcome to Zestful Aging, where I talk with fascinating, talented, and inspiring guests who reflect on the adventures and challenges of aging and who are living their lives with vibrance and purpose. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, psychotherapist, writer, and fellow Zestful Ager. I want to invite you to my brand new free webinar, Zestful Aging. Here's how you do it. You can sign up at NicoleChristina.com. And as always, I appreciate your feedback. Last week we spoke with John Graham, the daredevil who scaled the north face of Mount Denali. It has not been done since. But now he works for his nonprofit called Giraffe Hero Project, and he's looking for heroes who are contributing to the overall good, and he looks all over the world at people of all ages. It's a fascinating interview. Check it out. And next week, we're going to speak with comedian Regina Stoops. Well, I have my Jack Russell Terrier Sparky right beside me and my coffee in my hand. So let's begin. Today we're speaking with Michelle Vina-Baltsas, who's a certified intuitive eating counselor and body image coach. And she helps women of all ages overcome shameful eating and body dissatisfaction. And today, by audience request, we're going to be speaking with Michelle about menopause, both the challenges and the hidden gifts it has to offer. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Nicole. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I am delighted because this is a subject that a lot of people are thinking about, they're questioning, they're looking for answers. My experience with clients is they even can feel out of control, a little bit crazy. Talk about what women can expect. And let's start with perimenopause.
Okay. Uh, that is sort of the introduction, and where things start to get a little bit irregular in terms of the menses, the periods, they start to get a little bit off, maybe more days, less days, they start to skip months. Probably, and again, I should start this with everybody is different. So we're all unique,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. And so we may all experience different things. But the standard type of symptoms are just irregularities, in everything, in mood, in periods, the frequency, the length, the heaviness of them, things like that. So, and mood does definitely start to get a little, interesting.
What a lovely diplomatic
Yeah,
term. I'm going to
yeah,
use that. Your
yeah.
moods are going to get
Yeah,
interesting.
they definitely get interesting, and I certainly experienced, and most of my clients do also experience an increase in anxiety. And also, for some, especially people who are predisposed to depression and anxiety, that typically increases during that time. Some not so much during peri, but definitely during actual official menopause.
So we can expect that. And I don't want to get sidetracked. I want to stick with the menopause, but I just want to add while this is going on, you may be launching kids, reassessing your marriage or partnership,
Yep.
thinking about retirement, caring
Mm-hmm.
for older
Yes.
parents. So
Yeah.
it seems like the timing was not well thought out.
Yeah, it's, like you said, there potentially could be a bunch of significant transitional things happening at the same time, like like a perfect storm, type of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. There could be sandwich generation stuff. There could be children going off to college, so you're dealing with empty nest. Some people, they decide that they're no longer, happy in whatever position jobs they may have, and they may want to be switching. So there potentially are three, four, five, six different things maybe happening all
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, in addition to the body changing, not just
Mm-hmm.
physically but hormonally. So it can be challenging. That's one word. It can also be a time to really reassess what someone wants out of their life for that second part of their life. So there's opportunities there.
I see. I see. So let's just talk a little bit more. You said the moods get interesting. Talk a little bit more about what symptoms. You said anxiety,
Yeah.
depression.
Hmm.
What else do clients come to you with and say, I'm in perimenopause and this is what my body's doing?
And I also forgot to mention the loveliness of the occasional, um, the sometimes sleep is interrupted. That has a
Mm,
lot to do with the hormone fluctuations. Sometimes people have night sweats, and then there's the flashes, which are
mhm,
all triggered by the hormonal changes, and also by stress and anxiety and things like that. So those are other things in addition to what's happening, what may be happening outside around you. I also experienced like an increased sensitivity to noises and things like that. I became like my hearing, it became like heightened, and just that, like I was like, oh, like very, very sensitive. I would say just in general, sensitivity seems to be like ramps up for a lot of different
mm,
things.
mhm. What about appetite?
Appetite, and again, I can't say often enough that everybody is different, but because a lot of people experience increased anxiety, and a lot of things, again, that sensitivity issue, so the stress is usually higher. And the thing is that it's consistent. Like, it's not just like you're in fight or flight a lot when you start to
Mhm,
go through this. So your body is pumping that cortisol often, so that is going to naturally increase your appetite. And also, as we're going through these phases, the metabolic rate is naturally lowering. Our estrogen is also lowering. So a lot of things are happening, and it's very normal for the appetite to increase. And of course, we know, like I said earlier, when stress is present, frequently appetite is increasing. So
mhm.
again, there's just a lot of things happening at the same time.
So, in your experience, in your practice, and this,
Mhm.
I understand this is a small part of the population, and you can't speak on the general population, but do you find that women are generally kind of going with the flow and sort of accepting the changes, or is there a sense that, oh my goodness, no, no, I don't want this? So how are they oriented in your experience to these enormous emotional life, and body changes?
Well, it's a very challenging time for the women that I work with, and again, like we said earlier, there's usually more than one significant transition happening simultaneously. So I think people are like, this is going on, and this is going on, and
Mm,
I have
mm-hmm,
these symptoms. I'm in a meeting, and all of a sudden I start
mm,
flashing, and I'm not
mm-hmm,
sleeping well, and so it really seems to compound everything. The physical body changes are very difficult for women to navigate emotionally, because, in many cases, in some cases, people are eating more. Sometimes it is out of stress. There could be, many, as you well know, many reasons why people are eating more. It could be for emotional reasons, it could be hormonal. But some women are eating, they feel similarly to what they always were eating, and yet they're still, weight is still, increasing. And during this period, it is normal to gain, average 12 to 15 pounds during this period of time. So people kind of need to manage their expectations around that.
I
And
see.
instead, what happens is that people start to cut out food groups or really like severely restrict food groups, mainly carbohydrates, because people swear that that is what's putting on the weight. And, really what's happening is the body is just changing and things are redistributing.
Mm.
But there's a lack of understanding of what is actually happening in the body. And so people blame themselves and then they start to restrict.
I
And,
see. And
you
what
know,
happens then when they start counting their carbs? What's the consequence of that?
they generally want more carbs because the
Ah.
body requires them for energy, and there are, that we have needs, and so the more we cut back on those carbs when we eat them, usually it's with such passion, and veracity. It's like you can't stop eating them because your body is literally starving for them. So, people need to understand what is happening and that cutting back or eliminating is not the answer. The
Mhm.
answer is finding more balance and harmony in other areas, and certainly, eating in a way that makes your body feel good. We need to nourish our bodies from the inside out and be thinking, how do I want to feel when I'm eating? And really, I like to call it investigative eating. See, your
Mm.
body is going through massive, massive changes. So
Mhm.
we need to be compassionate on all fronts, and that includes what we're choosing to eat. So looking at food differently and looking at it as how do I feel when I eat X type of food or Y type
Mhm.
of food? Do I feel good afterwards or do I not?
Mm.
And then we can make more educated, nourishing choices based on that, not based on whether or not the food has carbohydrates in it or whether the food, is deemed by society as bad or good. We're going
Mhm.
more with how we're feeling on the inside and how we feel sometimes the next day, because certain foods, they have the ability to make us not feel so great the next day. There may be swelling, there may be bloating, but it's important for us to know, especially as we enter in this period of our lives, what foods are working for us, and what foods are working against us in terms of how we feel.
Very different than a diet, which
Oh,
are external rules that are
yes,
not personal to, does this make me feel better and energized? Or,
exactly.
right, so that, I think what you're saying is if there's any time to be more mindful and intuitive, this is the time.
Agreed, agree.
Mm.
Because things that people used to eat, maybe in their 20s, 30s, maybe even into their 40s, for whatever reason, just may not agree with them anymore. And
Mm.
it's not a calorie issue. This food just doesn't make me feel good, you know? And then, like I said, then they can make choices based on that. And it also opens up opportunities to try new foods, which is kind of exciting, or different
Mhm.
combinations of foods.
Mm. Do you think most women um, suffer a kind of emotional loss or grief around no longer being able to bear children? Is that a pretty typical response?
I think it's a combination. I think that some people are rejoicing because they because they don't have to
Thank
deal
God
any.
that's over.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard both from my clients and just from friends, saying, "Oh, I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that anymore."
Mm.
But there is still like this, like this low-lying kind of like it's very evident then that it's a new phase of our life,
Mhm.
and we're no longer able to bear children. And there's something, I think, a little bit, even though most of us, I would say, probably wouldn't want to bear any more
Mm.
children or go through
Mhm.
that whole diaper phase, maybe with grandchildren where they can go home.
Right,
But I
exactly.
don't know that many people, into their 50s or 60s or whatever would really want to bear children again. But it's just the idea that you no longer can. That's
Mm.
is definitely a mourning, I think, there. And that's certainly what I am experiencing and what many of my clients are like. I don't want to have any more kids,
Mm,
but it's always nice to have that
I
choice.
see. I see. You know what I think about too is there's this little bit of a sense of this is a marker, and it's getting closer and closer to the conversation, right, of mortality.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, it is a game changer. And like you're saying, this is the line in the sand. This is not for kids. This is this is definitely Adult Swim for sure. Yeah,
You can dress like a kid and be,
yeah,
you could do your hair, you
yeah.
could do your face, you can
Hmm.
spend all the money in the world, but you can't get your childbearing years
No,
back.
you cannot turn back the clock. You cannot do it. And there is I think it's perspective. I think it's mindset. There you can really stay in the past and mourn the, adolescence and 20s and 30s, and, even all the way through. But how is that serving us? So I think we just need to, and what I do my best to do every day, and certainly how I coach around this is, what are we looking forward to? And what are the gifts, the hidden gifts? That we can find in this period of time of our life. And it's not that it's definitely different. It's definitely different. And one of the things that, I do a lot is, and I'm sure most of your listeners and certainly you do too, is, read about these things because it can be very isolating, to think that, wow, am I going crazy? I mean, what is
Mm-hmm.
happening here? Because the body is under really significant changes that we've never experienced before.
Mm-hmm.
And the emotional piece can be really challenging if you don't understand what's actually happening. So I feel, coming from the standpoint of educating ourselves about what is happening in my body, because for me, like, that is like, okay, this is within the parameters of normal for this
Mm-hmm.
period of my life, and I really want to understand this better so that I don't feel as frightened. And it also helps to reduce the anxiety because the isolation is reduced, and then we also understand it better. And I think when people understand things better, they can be a lot more. I like to think that they could be more compassionate with themselves, and with others when they start to understand what are the chemical ramifications of this in the body.
I
Um,
see. That sounds very wise. And I'm wondering, I mean, you might know more about this, and I know that you want to give us some book titles, but
mhm.
I'm guessing that there must be some online communities of women who are going through this.
Y- um, there are the ones I have found are on Facebook. There may be some in other places.
Mm-hmm.
My only I would just caution people that most of the groups that I have found online, and I'm actually considering starting my own weight neutral,
Mm-hmm.
menopausal, health at every size group, because they are so focused on weight, so focused
Ah.
on weight, because that is what the buzz is. And as we know, our
Mm-hmm.
culture is really stuck on the thin ideal. And
Mm-hmm.
I also feel that people equate aging with weight, and they feel like, as in many cases people are putting on some weight during this period, it makes them feel, in quotes, frumpy. And
Oh.
so there really, the body image work is it's always important, but it's specifically important, I think, during this phase, because we need to really start tuning in and finding our gifts that have not changed. No matter where our body is, we still have those same gifts to offer, you know? And I think we need to start looking more at that, and not so much at the physical changes, because if people focus on that, which, as you know, is a distraction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, they'll really get off track, and I think that the symptoms can just can exacerbate.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, I'm thinking about this as a real opportunity to it reminds me of adolescence in the sense that there's so many changes and
Mm-hmm.
so many mood changes and transitions and identity issues. And maybe this is an opportunity to do it differently than many of us did in adolescence.
Yes. Yes. Because we have a lot more knowledge now. We know a lot more about ourselves. Yes, I agree. It is an opportunity to do it differently. I think it's also an opportunity to approach this from, I call it like a three-prong approach, even though that sounds kind of technical. But, I feel that there needs to be a physical component, an emotional, and a spiritual component to really managing the feelings and the changes that happen during peri and during menopause
Mm,
because you know you need to look at the whole person, not just at what many people are looking at, the hot flashes and the weight gain. There's so much more to it, and you've touched on that, in terms of the identity changes that, things change when, for people that have had children, dealing with empty nest, and you're no longer in that primary parenting role. So it's like, now what? So there's
mhm,
a loss there, there's sadness there, there's a lot of different things to have to manage. And
mm,
so, as you said, also the mindfulness piece has to really come to mind. Other emotional things that people can look at that I highly, highly recommend is making more intergenerational connections, being with
mm,
people of all ages, because we all have things that we can offer. And I am with people, women that are older, sometimes from my church group, because that's part of the population there. But I love being with them because they help me to see that there is life after this.
mm,
There is life after your children go off to college. There's life after menopause. And these women are so vibrant. And to me, it's a reflection of what my future will be. And that makes me feel hopeful and excited. And I learn so much from them. And whenever I can, I hang out with young people because they teach me so much too. So
mhm,
across the board, just hang out with people of all different ages, shapes, sizes, socioeconomic. We need to
mhm.
keep feeding ourselves with this kind of great stuff.
It's
Um,
wholesome.
it is wholesome, and it's really important. And on the spiritual side, I think it's cultivating a gratitude practice has helped me tremendously, and
Mhm,
cultivating more self-compassion for myself, which I'll be honest was not easy, and
mhm.
something that I was completely unfamiliar with until I
Mhm,
became, I started reading more about Dr. Christian Neff and her work. And for me, cultivating a self-compassion practice has been, I saved my life.
mhm,
It has allowed me to be so much more gentle with myself, with my body as it's transitioning, with my family. They're very thankful, you know. And so
mhm,
all of those things, and physically, like, as our body is changing, we need to adapt, so finding something, that joyful movement, not for weight loss or for maintenance, just for the joy of moving our bodies,
mhm,
and
mhm,
I've chosen to get into a routine yoga practice. And again, between that and meditation and self-compassion,
mhm.
again, completely changed my life. And, Nicole, I tried yoga probably in my early 40s, and I was like, this is not for me. This is too slow. Like, I was a big spin person, so I
I
was into
see.
like the adrenaline thing,
Intensity.
intensity, and now I'm like,
Yeah.
slow it down, you know? And
Ah.
so as often as I can do yoga, I do it. And it helps so much with our changing bodies. And, as they say, if you don't move it, you lose it.
Oh, yeah.
So our backs, our spines, and we got to keep moving them to keep all that seminal fluid moving around.
Mhm.
It helps with osteoporosis. There's just so many benefits. But if yoga is not your cup of tea, anything, just keep moving.
Mhm.
So Of course, integrating the meditation will help with the anxiety that a lot of women experience during this period. It will help to clear our minds. It keeps the creativity flowing because it's our minds are clear and uncluttered.
I read
So,
some research that meditation during menopause actually lessens hot flashes.
yep.
I don't know if you saw that.
I
Isn't that
haven't, but I don't,
amazing?
I'm not
You're not
surprised.
surprised.
Not surprised at all,
Mm-hmm.
because I think and I think it's also important to like keep track, of when some of these symptoms become more prominent. So, typically a lot of people are flashing more when they are, like you're saying, in a stress state. So these are times when we need to, as difficult as it is, need to slow it down a little bit, and really just kind of get back in our bodies. Even though oftentimes that's the place we don't want to be,
Mm-hmm.
it's the place we probably need to be. Um, so it's really just getting to know ourselves on a very different level, and going back to that self-compassion piece. That is the piece that I find I had the most difficulty with, and my clients, to them, they just shut down. It's so far into them also. They're just like, I don't understand how this is going to help me, and then we go through it, but it's not easy. But if your heart and mind are open to it, it can transform your life.
I can imagine. So I'm thinking about some of the practices that, and I know you're familiar with Margaret Fletcher's work with
Mm-hmm.
diabetes and
Yep.
mindfulness and this intuitive eating, and the idea that when your body is having a hot flash, and maybe instead of saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm sweating, I'm all red, it's
Mm-hmm.
annoying," like something about you're trying to balance yourself and everything is out of whack, and you're
Mm-hmm.
doing the best you can to
Yes.
get back into a state of, hormonal balance.
Yep.
That's probably a very different framework than most of us come to our hot flashes with.
Yeah. I mean, I 100%, that I love Migret and I love her work. She's fantastic, but acceptance, allowing and
Mm,
accepting is, as the older I'm getting, I'm seeing more and more that uncertainties are heightened. And the truth
mhm,
is they probably always were there, but for some reason, I feel them more now. As I'm aging, I feel the
mhm,
uncertainties are coming at me faster, and I'm more sensitive to them. And when I started to learn more about the gifts of accept and allow,
aha.
my again, another thing to add to the this changed my life. And I read and I listen to Dr. Tara Brach a
Oh, I
lot.
was just
I just
thinking,
Yeah, I
just
mean,
thinking that I wonder if she's talking about Tara
oh,
Brach.
absolutely. I mean,
Yeah,
she's like
she's the queen of that.
she's the queen. And when I read Radical Acceptance,
Uh.
it was like I felt like she was just I was like, did she get in my brain? How did she do that?
How does she know?
How does she
Yeah.
know? And I have it on audio, and I read it a while ago, and I still listen to chapter 4 and 5 over and over again, and
Mm,
also Dr. Christian Neff's Self-Compassion,
mm-hmm.
because when you're in that state, you're fighting it, you're resisting it,
Oh, yeah.
but it intensifies it. So we need to go into that allowing state, and just like open up our hearts to it and say, this really, and the first step of self-compassion is knowing that we're struggling, acknowledging that there's a struggle, you know,
Suffering,
the
suffering.
suffering. We are
Mm-hmm.
suffering. The next is acknowledging that we're not alone, that we are not the only ones. And then, of course, the third step is in sprinkling in kindness and compassion wherever we can, as often as we can. But first, we
Mm-hmm.
have to acknowledge this is a moment of suffering. And we have to stop and be like, it's okay, Michelle. You're suffering right now. And then
Mm-hmm.
I visualize my heart opening to it and just being like, allow,
Am I remembering correctly? Tara Brach does a meditation that it sounds so simple, but it is so difficult, where she says, yes, 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 even though she
Yes.
doesn't want it. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it is here, and
Yep.
I'm not going to argue with
Mm-hmm.
reality. And
Yep.
there's something about saying yes that just changes the whole dynamic.
It does. It does. And, some people use visuals. I use the visual of my heart opening and
Mm,
just letting it in and just knowing that somewhere the universe is supporting me and that somehow I'm learning from this experience. And what I've learned is that I need to stay open as I can. And I am human, so there are going to be times when I'm going to want to close off again, and then I
mm,
get the reminder, open again,
mhm.
keep
I mean,
opening.
you're just what you're describing, and maybe this is sort of ageist in its own way, but what you're describing really sounds like wisdom to me. The wisdom of learned experience, that
Yeah.
I can say, no, I don't want my kid to be challenging. I don't
Hmm.
want it to be snowing again in Syracuse,
Hmm.
as it was this morning, by the way, in April.
In April.
In April.
Ugh.
I don't
Yeah.
want whatever. But here it is.
Yep. In spite of our
Mm-hmm.
not wanting it, it's still there. Right? So it's like, what are
Mm-hmm.
we going to do? I mean, it's resist, persists. You keep resisting
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be persistent. It's not going to go away. So the alternative is to keep fighting that or to move into that as gently as possible into acceptance. And I believe that, like I said earlier, we're going to still resist at times. It's like when we forgive, sometimes we take it back and then we go back and then we take it back, and that's all part of the process. But, with the allowance and the acceptance, it's a process. But like most of these things that you and I do with working, we have to keep flexing these muscles. And
Mm-hmm.
then soon it becomes our default. Our default network gets reprogrammed.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to keep just exercising that and saying, okay, I know this isn't easy right now, but I'm going to keep going more toward the direction I want to move in. Then eventually it starts to get a little bit easier. Not at first, but these are radical concepts.
Yes, they are. And I'm thinking about circling it back to a woman who might be getting really moody, who
Hmm.
might be, when you say night sweats, that's like a delicate way to say it. I mean,
Hmm.
the idea of waking up and everything is soaked,
Yep.
and you get up and have to shower. I mean,
It's not
it's
pleasant.
alarming.
It is.
It can
It
be a little
is.
scary, but this idea of, oh gosh, I feel terrible, I'm sweaty, I have to drink water, I'm probably
Hmm.
dehydrated.
Yep.
And yet, and what does Tara Brach says, something like, and this too, and this too. She
Hmm.
has, am I quoting her
I
right? Does
think
that sound
so.
familiar?
It sounds
Something
sort of
like that.
familiar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the idea of, yep, here it is. Yep, here
Yes.
it is.
Right.
And not saying, this is the worst thing ever. How am
Hmm.
I going to function tomorrow at
Hmm.
work? I'm
Hmm.
tired. I'm cranky.
Hmm.
Yep, here it is.
Yeah. Yep. And just be like, and again, not easy, but so finding some tools in order to manage that, like
Mm-hmm.
getting cooler pajamas, invest in a ceiling fan. You know what I mean? I mean, we need to, it's happening whether we like it or not.
Yes.
So part of acceptance is getting that ceiling fan, if it has to be, or getting, a freestanding fan, if it has to be in your face, it has to be
Yep.
in your face.
Yep.
Get, cotton, get natural fibers.
The prettiest thermal water
Yeah,
bottle you can find.
exactly, and just invest
Mm-hmm.
in yourself because you want to be as comfortable as possible, and that
Mm-hmm.
goes for your clothing during the day too. People are so into,
Mm-hmm.
I've gained weight, blah, 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 and they're wearing clothes that fit them like 10 to 20 pounds ago.
I
And
see. So
and
they're
how does that
uncomfortable.
feel? That feels
Oh.
awful, right? It's like a
Uh-huh.
punishment almost. This is not the time or ever to be wearing clothing that doesn't fit properly,
I see. Mm-hmm.
So be comfortable, and I think to me that's a a move toward increasing self-care and also moving into that self-compassion is how can I make my body feel comfortable while it goes through this transition, and not being
Mhm.
caught up in the number that's in the clothing, but in how it makes you feel. Can you move
Mhm.
easily? Are the fibers comfortable on your skin? Because that's also another thing that sometimes people experience is skin sensitivity, because there's dryness that happens when the estrogen levels drop. So what's going to be comfortable on your body, and loving yourself enough to be like, you know what, these clothes just aren't working for me anymore.
Mhm.
I need
Mhm.
things that work for me,
And
you
are
know?
beautiful and I feel good
Yes,
and not that are
yes,
just hiding what I think is an
exactly.
unacceptable body.
Yes, yes,
Mm.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Comfort doesn't mean that they doesn't have to be something that makes you feel good, like you're saying, you know? Shop around, you know, and find things that and take the time to do it and make it like an outing, you know, like a fun thing, and then plan something fun for after, because it can be difficult for people to see that they may have changed in size, you know, and sometimes mirrors can for people can be very unforgiving. So plan something for after to do that you really look forward to that has nothing to do with the way you look. Just like
Mm.
someone you love, hang out with them, have lunch or dinner or whatever with a friend, go for a massage or
Mm.
facial, whatever you're able to do. Maybe just go for a nice walk. It doesn't cost a
Mm.
dime, you know, and
Mhm.
just love yourself up, because your body is going through something, you know,
Mhm.
and we just need
Mhm.
to love it up the best that we can. And that doesn't mean it's going to happen every moment of the day. But I think that when we're focusing on striving really to do that as often as we can without it being rigid, we're going to be in a much, much better position than if we're fighting it all the time.
Oh, I love that message. I think so many of our listeners will find that so freeing.
Yeah. So I think that there are gifts here. I just think we need to look for them in a different way, you know. And I think that again, if our hearts and minds are open to that, I think it's absolutely possible. And I think it's just so important for people to know that our gifts are still there. They're still there, you know, and we still have them to offer to others. We're not over, we're not done. You know, our value hasn't changed. We are still the same, if not more, because now we have so much more knowledge to offer others. So we can bless people in that way also, you know.
Mm.
So it's not the
Oh,
end. It's not the end at all. It's just different.
that's such a beautiful message, Michelle. And I know you have some books that you wanted to recommend.
Yes. Um, the first one that I read years ago was called, this is a funny name, Female Brain Gone Insane. And that really, it's by Maya London. And that really talks about the stress, the depression, potential of depression, anxieties,
Mm.
and the chemical piece of it, which was very, very educational. The
Aha.
drop in serotonin, all of this and how it's related. That book for me was mind blowing. I'm like, oh, now I get it. So
Aha.
that was a huge, huge piece. Another really good one is called The Wisdom of Menopause by
Mm.
Christiane Northrup.
Yes.
Another one that I absolutely love that taps more into the spiritual piece of this is The Age of Miracles, Embracing the New Midlife, and that's by Marianne Williamson. A
Mm-hmm.
beautiful book. Uh, the other one, and you know I love Margot Main, is
Mm-hmm.
Pursuing Perfection. That book
Mm-hmm.
is fantastic. And then the last one that I mentioned before is Radical Acceptance by Tara
Mm-hmm.
Brach. And
Amen.
anything by her, as far as I'm
Oh,
concerned, is like, you know, just eat it up. It's fantastic.
I
Her whole
just heard
mentality.
I heard this morning, it is not confirmed, this is a rumor. She is going to have a Netflix special.
Really?
That's what I hear on the street.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, and she does have a podcast also.
Yes, she
She's
does.
she's just I really just everything about her, even her voice like is so soothing.
Mm.
Um And
Absolutely.
radical acceptance is just great. She talks about so many personal things, and so does Marianne Williamson. Talks about a lot of personal things in her book. And when I read that, I was like, oh, thank goodness I'm not the only one. And she just talks
Mm-hmm.
about the challenges of the things that are no longer forefront, like children. That's not our primary focus anymore as we
Mm-hmm.
go to this next phase of life, and how sad she felt about that. And I said, gee, if Marianne Williamson, who's like queen of like spirituality,
Enlightenment,
can
yeah.
right can feel sad, then so can I.
Yes,
I have
that's
permission.
right.
I have permission now.
Absolutely.
So, and Margot Main is genius, but she talks about the body and the myths around midlife, and things we can expect. She also goes into talking about, because most of her work that she does is helping people overcome eating disorders after
Mm-hmm.
in midlife. So that is a big piece that people don't realize. Trying to, in quotes, recapture their youth, they have eating disorders because they want to
Mm-hmm.
be, rail thin again, because they think that that makes them look younger. And
Mm-hmm.
so all of these terrible things are happening, and eating disorders, from 9 years old through who knows what age. It can happen at
Mm-hmm.
any age, and people need to really understand that that is a reality. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's very important, and I've done some research for another project, and the Renfrew Foundation,
Mhm.
the big for our audience is
Yes.
sort of the gold standard for eating disorder treatment, is seeing a
Mhm.
tremendous rise in women over 45
Yep.
coming in to residential treatment for eating
Yep.
disorders.
It's that is
Mm-hmm.
that is the truth, and it's an age group that most people really don't think about for eating disorders, but like you said,
Mm-hmm.
it's on the rise. It is
Mm-hmm.
on the rise, and I think when people educate themselves more, and when they understand what is actually happening in the body, I think you know knowledge is power. So the
Mm-hmm.
more we can feed ourselves with these positive influences, like books, like I've mentioned, podcasts, listening, especially to a podcast like yours, where you talk about so many different things, but all like in the most positive light, it gives people hope, especially during a
Yes.
time when they're feeling so depleted, in
Mm-hmm.
that particular area. So I just think, keep the vibe up as much as you can in whatever way you can. And certainly movement, meditation, reading, listening to things that are nourishing, all of those things are going to help people during this period of their life and beyond, and
Mm.
beyond.
I love that message, Michelle. And for people who want to find out more about your work, where is the best place to find you?
My website probably that is www my name
Mm-hmm.
michelleVina-Baltsas.com. And I've been kicking around the idea of starting a Haze or Health at Every Size, weight neutral group, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm really kicking that idea around,
Mm-hmm.
because I do belong to two or three, and I would say 95% of the posts are about weight
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and
Belly
how.
belly weight, I'm guessing.
Yes, the belly weight, because
Mm-hmm.
that's where, and what people don't realize is that the belly weight is actually, Margot Main describes it as a life spare tire or a life preserver.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and actually one of her clients mentioned that, and she talks about it in her book. Pursuing Perfection, that extra weight is actually producing estrogen. So the estrogen that, if people still have their female parts, would stop producing, but they the estrogen needs to come from somewhere. So the extra fat produces estrogen, and that is actually helping to manage the menopausal symptoms, and it's also helping to reduce bone loss.
Wow.
Yeah, so what people think is like this horrific thing, they have this spare tire, it's so disgusting, blah, blah,
Yes.
blah. It's actually helping their bodies. I'm continually amazed at how our bodies take care of us.
Mm.
They're so smart. They're so
Mm-hmm.
smart, and they're so intuitive. They're like, oh, look what happened. the estrogen is no longer being
Oh,
produced. And
right.
now, so okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to produce it somewhere else. So this is actually benefiting people. And I think when people understand that, they may not embrace it fully the first moment they hear it,
Mm-mm.
but when we're looking at it from with that compassionate lens, we can see, thank you, body. Thank you so
For
much for
working in my best
exact
interest.
exactly. And that to me is so beautiful. And that's a game changer, I believe. And the way we look at that, and the way we can then move into that body respect appreciation and not be fighting, ugh, I hate this, blah, blah,
Mm.
blah. Instead, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, thank you, belly.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, spare tire. You're taking good care of
Mm-hmm.
me. Thank you so much. So again, it's loving where we are, or I don't know about loving, but because some people really they have a hard time with that word, and I understand that. It's appreciating and respecting that our body
Mm-hmm.
is working on our behalf.
Mm-hmm. In the most wise way that
Yes.
most of which we don't even understand yet.
Exactly, exactly.
Mm.
But it's working to make it better for us long term, and maintain as much bone density as we can to help reduce those symptoms. And thank you, body. Thank you for taking good care of me.
Mhm. Oh, I love that. What a beautiful way to end.
Yeah,
Thank you,
yeah,
body. Thank you for taking care of me.
yeah.
Michelle, thank you so much. I really am looking forward to having our audience hear this because it is going to resonate so deeply with so many people. I really appreciate your experience and your honesty and your wisdom. I think that it's going to do good things in the world.
I agree, and I am tickled pink because the thought of people like having more tools to deal with this period makes me so happy. I love to
Mm,
share what I know, and
mm,
if somebody's like, "Oh, I'm not alone," then to me that's like the best thing since sliced bread.
mhm. Thank you again for joining me
Thank you,
today.
Nicole. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you allowing me to share this with everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. If you like the podcast, please share with some of your friends. I love to hear from my listeners. Send me an email at NicoleChristina.com. And next week, we're going to speak with comedian Regina Stoops. She's from a town in the Midwest called Normal, but she says she's anything but. Regina's humor centers around her numerous coming out experiences. Prepare to laugh at her really sweet humor and be touched by her powerful stories of resilience. And please consider becoming a patron of the show. You will get access to exclusive bonuses and you will be part of the Zestful Aging community. Keep us going strong. Go to patreon.com/zestfulaging. See you next time for another episode of Zestful Aging.